One, do you think they're going to get them? And two, do you even think they do need them right now in terms of their preparation for a counteroffensive?
Annmarie, I think that the Ukrainian people and the soldiers have shown us so much spirit, so much commitment, but they are losing thousands of their people. They're losing their infrastructure. And I think at this point that what they're asking for is reasonable. I think air power, I think longer range missiles is very reasonable. And I think if they could take out the bases in Russia that are launching these missiles or drones or the airplanes that are dropping these missiles, I think that we would start seeing a more level playing field. And I think that really it's time to go for a win and not just a stalemate.
That's certainly what Yuri Sak told us yesterday, Ambassador. But it comes down to a question of strategy and best use of resources, according to some. I talked about that today on Bloomberg Radio with Kelly Grieco from the Simpson Center. She's a senior fellow and spoke to the actual strategy and what Ukraine needs in her view. Let's listen.
Switching to the F-16 is an attempt almost to make the Ukrainian Air Force into the American Air Force. But Ukraine faces a very different problem set. They are at a quantitative and qualitative disadvantage against the Russians. And so rather than fighting the Russians symmetrically with F-16s, it's a far more effective and smarter approach to continue with an asymmetric strategy that's been successful so far.
So who's right on this one, Ambassador? Should we simply be doubling down on Patriot air defense systems and HIMARS instead of playing with fighter jets?
Joe, I think all of the above. I think we need to strategize to win, and I think we need to do it as quickly as possible so that the rebuilding process for Ukraine can go forward. I think this means that Ukraine must win. We must stick with them throughout. And I think that means now is the time to make the decision that we will help them win and win decisively.
Kay, we also, of course, had Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, in a surprise trip to Kyiv. You obviously know NATO HQ very well. Take a listen to what he had to say when he got there to Ukraine.
All NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member. Ukraine needs security because no one can tell when and how this war ends. But what we do know is that when the war ends, we need to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself.
Ambassador, what do you make of Jens Stoltenberg going to Kyiv and saying, NATO, listen, we are ready for Ukraine. Ukraine, you are going to become a part of the alliance. Is he not potentially poking Putin right now?
No, I think that NATO has said already that eventually Ukraine would be an ally in NATO. One thing that President Putin misjudged is that Ukraine was on the verge of getting into NATO and using that as an excuse for his aggression. Ukraine is a very important partner to NATO. It has been for years, since the end of the Cold War and the breakup of the Soviet Union. And that has always been in the cards, that when Ukraine was ready, which they have not been, that they would be able to access into NATO. We do hope that is the case. And what Jens Stoltenberg said is exactly the attitude of our NATO allies. But Ukraine wasn't ready. They knew they weren't ready, and they were a valid and very valuable partner for NATO. We do want them to be an ally in the future, and I think the future is at the right time. So now we need to help them fend off this terrible aggression against them. They have fought valiantly, and when this is decided, which we hope is sooner rather than later, then we will start trying to help them rebuild for sure. And we will then begin to look at when the timing would be right for them to be an ally.
Ambassador, as well, you know, this has been going on for over a year, and there's a debate that seems to be heating up in Washington about whether the U.S. should be committing this much money, this many resources to the war effort in Ukraine, knowing that this has become a battle of attrition in many cases, certainly in the Donbass region. How much time do we have to play with here? When does this war need to be won?
Well, Joe, I think that putting the timetable on it is very difficult because I think the Ukraine has the position that you can't do a ceasefire right now because the territory of Ukraine has been invaded, and you don't want to put in place where the Russians are now. You need to go back to their borders or where the Ukrainians feel they can negotiate from the position of strength, which is their sovereign border. And I think that at this point, we've got to rely on the Ukrainians to make that decision. And yes, we are going to stick with them. And yes, it is costly, but we haven't put one American troop on the ground there. Zelensky's not asking for American troops. He's asking for arms. And I think it is a trade that I would make every day, that we would help an ally that is helping itself, that we will not put our troops on the ground, but we will give them the arms they need to protect their territory, which is also in America's interest as well as the European interest. It's in America's interest because other autocrats need to see that we will stand up, we will not lose interest, we will not flag in our commitments, that we will stick with allies and commitments that we have made. And China needs to see that, North Korea needs to see that, Iran needs to see that. It's a message that is for America's interests as well as the Europeans, that we stick with Ukraine and that Ukraine win and there is a peaceful settlement. And we will certainly want to do everything to help them rebuild this from this atrocious aggression of Russia on this sovereign nation.
Ambassador, there's another place of interest right now on the minds of those at the Pentagon, and that's Sudan. And even though you had Lloyd Austin, the defense minister, secretary, at the contact group in Germany talk about Ukraine, he also made some comments about Sudan. Take a listen.
We've deployed some forces into theater to ensure that we provide as many options as possible if we are called on to do something, and we haven't been called on to do anything yet. No decision on anything has been made. Our focus is to make sure that we continue to do prudent planning and that we create and maintain as many options for our president as possible.
Ambassador, should the United States be evacuating U.S. citizens right now from Sudan?
You know, that has to be a decision made by the administration, which has the people there with an embassy. And I know in my heart that they will decide when the people in the embassy say it is time to take our Americans to safety. The situation there is certainly volatile. It's dangerous. Our great Foreign Service officers have been in these kinds of situations in danger before, and they act very, very boldly and represent our interests in safety for our own personnel, but also making sure that we do everything we can to make the tensions go away or lessen the tensions. And it's volatile right now. I wouldn't put my opinion there because they know more inside information than I certainly would.